Hi, this is Khalil Golivala. Welcome to another episode of the BIPOC Manager podcast, a weekly podcast helping minorities overcome prejudice to work and build the careers of their dreams. Today, we have an amazing guest, Carolyn Schädler. Carolyn Schädler is a business coach. She's a mentor. She is an innovation advisor. She has lived in so many cool places. She's worked in Switzerland. She's worked in Singapore. She's going on in Montreal. She's an amazing story about someone who's kind of explored different cultures, built relationships, integrate herself into new lands, and her story is gonna be one that's super fascinating. Carolyn, please.
Hi, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm really honored being here and just having this talk with you. It's a topic that is really close to my heart. So I'm glad that we can talk about immigration, integration, and all that goes along, because it's all about people. And I just love working with people, talking to people, and helping people.
Yeah, Carolyn. So if you, I would love to. I guess even for me, if others, just to learn a bit more of your journey. Like what is your journey that took you from your place of birth to Montreal, Canada?
Yeah, so it could be a very long journey, but to keep it short and sweet, I was born and raised in Liechtenstein. Liechtenstein, for those who are not familiar, it's that tiny little country in the heart of Europe. So I grew up there. I still have my family there. I went to Switzerland, which is very close, for my studies and to start working. I spent a couple of years working there, and I just found I need something else. I need to open my horizon and see part of the world. So when I got the opportunity, I moved to Singapore. I moved to Asia with probably the initial idea to work there for a year, two, probably maybe three, as most people do when they move to a different country, especially in Singapore. They go for a distinct stint and with the idea to come back home. So I moved there. I finally stayed almost 10 years, had two kids there. And we then decided that we need to see a different place. We need to go and find a new home that fits better our family life. And so we were looking at different places and finally settled for Montreal, Canada. So I've been here for 3.5 years now.
Nice, nice.
Yeah.
And this is where I found so fascinating is the fact that you've lived in so many different cultures and environments, and the fact that you're building relationships. It's something you've done professionally, but I imagine also in your private life. Can you talk a little bit more of sort of that dynamic between sort of immigration and it's called immigration and migration? Like, can you talk like what's it like to be in these different places and become a part of that culture and understand it?
Yeah, absolutely. For me, immigration really goes hand in hand with integration, because from my personal view, you can't really immigrate somewhere without integrate into the culture, building those connections with people. Because if you do so, you're, in my view, missing out on too much. And so I wouldn't want to go to a place and not be open and interested in the new culture, in how the people tick and what makes them smile and what makes them furious and why they work in a way they do that is different from how you were used to, because we all grow up in a certain way. And through changes, we are kind of disrupted, and there is always a choice. There is the choice to embrace the new way and be open and learn about it and try not to be judgmental at the beginning, which is hard, even for me, who have done that a couple of times. You immigrate to a new place, you come with preconceived ideas and you see things at the beginning and you're like, oh, why don't they do that like that? It doesn't make sense. And you kind of have this idea, or actually just tell them, because in that other place I've been before, they do it in a better way. And if you just hold back with that and give it some time, and you're open and interested to learn more, you realize that most often, actually, there is a reason why someone behaves in that way or a culture works in that way. But you have to invest, you have to learn, you have to be patient to start to kind of peel those layers and see behind the scene. And I think that is for me what it is about integrating somewhere or immigrating somewhere. It takes time. It's not something that can be done on the first day, because it's like building those relationships with the people. You can meet someone and you can click from the very first minute, yes, but you don't know that person. You only get to know that person over time. I mean, it's, if you start new work colleagues, it's the same. You might feel familiar at the beginning and have some interest, but you don't really know the story of that person. The same with a relationship, and the same happens for me if you move to a different culture. So I think what is very essential about immigrating is being open, being interested, and what that entails is actually asking questions, open questions, talking to people, reading up. It depends how your what your personality is. Some are more about the reading and studying and reading all the newspapers and the local news and the history of the past 20 years. It helps you understand all that. And others prefer to talk to people, but I think it's about showing that genuine interest in the new culture you now belong to, because you actually want to belong. I think that's a universal need of anyone, to belong to the community, into the village, into the town they are currently. And especially for immigrants who have been in a way uprooted because you left what was familiar, you left what you were known, what you know, and the ways that worked for you. And now there are new ways. So you want to belong. And for that, it's a process. And I wouldn't want to call it work, but I would want to call it an effort, because it needs an effort. And so you can't, in my view, you can't really say, oh, a culture isn't really open to newcomers, because it takes an effort on both sides. It takes an effort on the newcomer to do their part of, again, asking questions, listening, having that openness. And as I said in the example before, taking that time to give it some time, because you might have, again, these preconceived notions. You think something works in that way, and over time you discover that actually no, it's different, and you were glad that you didn't judge people the way they did something, because you learned that oh now it makes sense. So these are some of the things that are important for me when I immigrated a new place, and I learned it in that 3-4 times I did that in the past.
That's really fast. It's I think it's something that you also mentioned, how that when we move or immigrate, it's not about connecting with the nature, it's connecting with the people, right? Like we're building relationships with them.
Yeah, I mean, you obviously, coming to Quebec, you have to adjust to the climate and to cold winters and the hot, humid summers, and that might be an adjustment, but that's not the hard part.
Yeah.
The hard part is the connection with the people, and that's what makes a difference as well. I don't think that the nature or the weather makes a really difference on you as a person, but the connections with the people and the relationships you build, that makes a difference.
Yeah.
Because as I said, you want to belong. And the fact that you want to belong makes it so hard if someone sees you as a foreigner, or triggers you in ways like you talked about that in previous episodes, triggers you in the ways like, oh, where do you really come from? Or I hear an accent, where are you from? Because that triggers probably most foreigners, because it reminds them that, oh, maybe I don't fully belong here yet. And that's why that I say there is this need of belonging, being part of a bigger society or community.
Yeah, I guess maybe Karen, just to take a bit of a tangent, but the fact that you mentioned you've been to different countries, different places, when you kind of arrive, like what are you doing? Because you talk about sort of, depending on someone's personality, they can understand the culture by connecting with people, reading books. But is there something that you're doing to maybe start building all those relationships? Like, do you, for example, when you arrive in a new place, are there any things you're doing right away to kind of maybe embed yourself within the culture or society?
I don't think I have really a proven way or that I consciously do something, but if I think back, it was always a combination of really soaking up information, like joining whatever local Facebook groups, reading the local news, embracing whatever is here, talking to people, asking them open questions. So people love to talk. So if you ask them open question, you get a lot of information. So I think it's also a bit about being vulnerable, about showing that, okay, I'm new here, I don't know these things, so let me ask those things from people. And people just love to talk. So if you ask them good open questions, they tell you a lot of things. And I think that's what I have been doing, trying to do. And obviously, I must say it helped a lot to have young kids, because the kids connect with other kids, and then obviously you connect. So that's what helped me a lot integrating here in Canada, because we arrived just at the beginning of the pandemic. So which could have been a very hard moment and a very hard time to actually integrate and make new friends, was in our situation like a plus, because we had young kids and they helped us build those first relationships here locally.
It's fascinating. I've never thought of that angle, but like, for example, you mentioned children, like, for people who do immigrate, who've got either they have the children in a new place, they come with the children are almost this bridge, right? They're almost this sort of an opportunity, because they're absorbing it as children within the school system. So they're being almost raised to be the citizens, right? I mean, it's something where they're kind of naturally being formed. But as adults, we kind of get to kind of, take some of that learnings back to ourselves. It's fascinating what you're saying about children.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's in a way the natural way that we all behaved when we were young, and now we growing older, we start to have we start to build those barriers about you and them, about being different. And I think it's also in a way immigrating. What I said, what comes with it, asking those open questions, listening, being open, have a genuine interest, it all helps breaking down those barriers that we have, and that we all have, consciously or unconsciously, the biases. That's why racism exists. It's all about the us versus them, being different, talking a different language, having a different belief, a different culture. So if we start to just be genuinely interested and talk to people and listen to what they say, even if even if we are not on the same page, just give them that space to actively listen. That is also part of what helps to reduce those barriers, and that is something that is very key, one of my key values that I want to pass on to my kids as well. So I think that was also one of the reasons that immigration, even sometimes it's the more challenging way, was our choice for our kids as well, to live in a different culture and grow up in a different way and have that openness.
Caroline, before we wrap up, and is there anything that maybe you'd want to mention? Anything that you'd want to discuss?
Yes, I think we were talking about having that genuine interest, and moving to a different place, and it being an effort. And I think I personally think it has to be a bit of an effort, because that's where growth happens. We all know that growth usually happens when we are outside of our comfort zone, be that at work or be that immigrating to a new place. So if we try to challenge ourselves from time to time and readjust to new situations, to new people, it can be challenging. It can be an effort, and it actually should be, because probably that's where more of the growth happens. At least I see that personally, that I'm learning so much while being in that integration phase, or while being in a different country, because I don't come with all that knowledge. I haven't grown up here. I haven't always seen the same. And again, I think for me personally, it's so revealing to see that sometimes it just takes time. It just takes time to understand things. And often we have that idea that, oh, we already know because we have been in a different situation. The older you get, it's like the less new things you learn. But I think keeping that kids approach, that openness of soaking up all that information. I learn a lot through my kids, and I try to replicate that. And I'm just so happy that I'm in that privileged situation that I can actually immigrate to a place, and that it's by choice. It's not out of necessity. I know some people immigrate because they need to leave their country, and their reality is completely different. However, I think once you are in a new country, you always have that choice of how much do you want to embrace it? How much do you want to be interested in your new world? And or how much do you want to keep on with what you were used to, and just not having that capability and for that openness. But I think it is to at least partially a choice. And for me, it's probably easier than for some others, because I'm an optimist person by nature. I often see the good things, so it makes it easier being forward-looking. And it's not about, I just want to add as well, it's not about forgetting the past. It's not about cutting off your roots and saying that, oh, the country I used to be before, it's all bad. It's not about, that good or bad. It's really just about expanding. I think it's just about like a balloon growing bigger and bigger and bigger, instead of having to switch sides from one to the other. So it's not either or, it's and that's the really nice thing, that you just add up more, and you don't take away anything, you just add more.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Like for example, for me, I came to Montreal, Canada when I was a student in my undergraduate. So I was a student. I wasn't really looking to understand culture. I was just there. I was a student, so I know my university culture. But the more time went on, like when I did my immigration exam, I studied the history of the country and what it did. But it was more time I was making the effort that I love to read. So reading books about Quebec history, reading books about Canadian culture, asking people about their lives, because then you realize that you're actually, like, once you're in a new place, you actually are involved in political discussions. You essentially have, this new history that you're part of. And I love the way you put expansion. It was almost like, I think of fish and water, right? Because originally you kind of move when you think this is the water you're in. And you're not going to forget the past, but the idea is your water has changed and you want to know about what is the environment I'm in. You don't want to be isolated. And that attitude of being optimistic, of being that, at least gives you some kind of agency, right? To want to go out there and learn and embrace the culture. Thank you for
I love that analogy. I will steal that from you about the water. I'm sure I will use that in the future. I love that.
Yeah. Carolyn, thank you so much for appearing. Thank you so much for sharing what you have.
Well, thank you. It was a real pleasure.
Thank you. Bye.